Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Eigen TV. Today we've got a new episode where we're going to have a chat about actually Eigen. We haven't done some videos about Eigen for a little while and wanted to kind of explore really, what's special about Eigen. Now, we all work here, so actually we can tell you lots of things that are special about Eigen, but really from a customer perspective, from a competitive perspective, you've been through 3 downturns as a business as well, and it would be really for you as a company and how have you grown through those periods. I'm really excited about this conversation, Murray, so and I'm sure everybody else is as well.
So yeah, that's right. 3 downturns, they seem to come around fairly regularly. So what's our differentiator? I think the first one is that we know the industry. We have a long background in the industry. We understand what people are trying to achieve in their jobs, what the outcomes of the process are, how the economics of an oil field work, what are the most important things. And so we have a technical background as well as the commercial and the business understanding. So we're applying technology in that context. We're not just trying to sell an IT product. We're actually trying to bring a solution that makes life better for our customers. The thinking, I guess my background was as a process engineer. So I was doing the work initially. And so I saw all the ways that I felt was inefficient and it could be done a lot better. So we've been constantly trying to make things better in a step-by-step way. Realistically, you can't turn an operation off, rebuild it and turn it on again. If you start up a new company, you can do that. But if you're an existing company with an asset in operation, you have to go step by step and you have to bring people with you. So the reality is finding the places where you can take a step and then build on it, step by step by step, and bring people with you. And each step has all kinds of challenges. You've got the obvious challenges around the data, in that nothing seems to be straightforward. Data's unique, people's situations are unique. It has to be correct. So people have to trust the outcomes of whatever you do. And also it has to be better than what you did before. So it has to be actually nice to use. It's a concept that's not talked about very much, but you have to enjoy using the new tool. You can never put it in a business case. That the business case always seems to have to be based on money. Like at the end of the day, how much will this save? But the reason it's successful is people actually like using it in the end. So it has to bring some joy. It has to be quicker, more effective, and mean that someone actually goes, well, I'd prefer to use this new way now, not just because it's being forced on me. And so we've always tried to bring solutions that really work, that understand what people are trying to do in their daily work and understand the whole process. You can't just replace, say, one bit of something with an app. It has to fit in with the whole thing. I think a good example of that is something we've done recently in drilling, where we built a portal that makes information from multiple systems just easily accessible. So people can log in and just see all that's going on in a drilling operation. Well, one of the big factors of that was the reports that come off the rig, the information. Well, that's done by different people on the rig, and they were just sending emails, spreadsheets. To automate this, we kept the process the same for them. They still send a spreadsheet, but what we've done is added some smart tech to extract all the data from the emails, take the reports out, file them, work out the metadata from the email, various rules, process them, and then publish the report into the portal. So the work process is the same offshore, so it's super easy to adopt. But now onshore, there's a web page, there's a portal with different pages, information from different systems, as well as now this daily report comes in there. So it's fitted into their existing work process, and it's made something better as a result. It seems kind of simple, but it works. It means people adopt it.
I think they always say, don't they, all of the best solutions they are really simple, and it's something that you need possibly in your day-to-day job to be able to make you more efficient, so then you can go and add value in other areas that actually then also help move your business forward or do your job well. And I think that's one of the things that we're always trying to get across, is that things don't necessarily have to be complicated. You could have a complex problem, but choose a piece of it that you would like to solve. And then as you embark on that journey, that then evolves and things start to then kind of gain momentum, and that product expands. And I think that's something we often talk about with Eigen, especially with like Ingenuity, or Ingenuity in particular. And we spoke about Ingenuity a lot when we talked about digital twin tech. I know we've just launched DecisionBridge Technology as well, which we'll talk about in a moment for everybody. So I'm throwing in all the lingo. So it for me, it's quite fascinating that it's you know, sort of trying to get Eigen into the hands of the people that really need it. And I think one of the things I loved when I first joined is that there was a strapline that said it was created by engineers for engineers. And for me, that meant that actually you could look under the hood and you knew exactly what was going on, and that was why you could deliver solutions fit for purpose. So I think that's great. And I think, which probably leads into my next question, which is, why are we so different? You know, what do we view why are we so different? You know, what is our competitive edge? I'm just going to ask that because I think you know, we don't often talk about it a great deal, and we probably should.
I think that's right. And so I think the competitive edge then is a combination of our experience, our knowledge of the industry, and then the software platform that we've built as a result of that. And so it allows you to transition into a more digital way of working step by step. So you can take simple stuff and just make dashboards if you want to, but then you can turn them into work processes. So the dashboards, with the addition of a single component, can now become templates that you can issue as reports. So you can start to create a history of them. It lets you create different versions of these for different audiences. So you can start from one place and go step by step. We also have what we've termed a data model, but really is a basic digital twin under the hood that we've had for years. And we've been working with the challenge of, how do you link information? How do you add context? How do you contextualize it for people? Because a lot of what people are doing is holding the context in their heads and then knowing where to go find that information. So it takes a while for a new person to come into a team, because they have to learn that context. They have to know, well, where are the drawings? Who do I speak to about this? What system's the maintenance in? But actually, if we can codify that context and add and contextualize this information, it starts to become more useful. You can start to find, if I find this thing, now I can find all the related stuff. And actually that's a huge core piece of a digital twin. It's the map of how things are connected, and part of that could link into a 3D model, or it might link into a simulation, or it might link to a document store. So like we've talked in other videos about what is a digital twin, well, it's many, many things that come together. And the beauty of it is you can go step by step. Like we've talked about before, you can start with a small thing. You can add the context for just an area, if you like, or a piece of equipment, and continually add on to it. And that's what our Ingenuity platform allows you to do. It has the connectors, it has the data, the model, where you can link and contextualize things. We've been working with graph databases now since we started back in 2007 when we started, and up till now we've been using graph databases which allow you to evolve this contextualization of data. So we've had it under the hood for a while, and we haven't talked about it enough, really. It's just always been there. But really, that's one of the keys, and it's not expensive. And you can go step by step. We understand how to take existing information and build this contextual model in a step-by-step way.
We've created a few videos, so if anyone's watching, you will be able to find these on Eigen TV, because they're separate playlists that you can access each of the sort of categories of conversations that we've been having. But we've, you know, reflected back even on customer journeys that you've embarked on. And I say embarked on because quite a lot of your customers have been with you a long time. And I think they've been with you, and you kind of develop the products and etc. and services that you offer and things like that as their needs have also grown.
Mm.
And I'd like to just pause and talk about that, and also probably talk about DecisionBridge Technology a little bit as well, because I know it's something we're excited about at the moment, more so. And just talk about that, because I think, you know, it's not an easy thing to survive 3 downturns and still be here growing stronger and stronger, because we were recruiting during COVID. So, right. You know, and that's something to be really proud of. So I wanted to kind of talk about sort of customer journey, and how you've kind of worked through those transitional phases, I suppose, with your customers.
Good question. So I think one thing to recognize is that as much as downturns can be painful, they're also a big opportunity, and they help us to make the transitions or changes in behaviors that we might have been wanting to make, but that was never the driver or the need at the time. And this recent one has been a huge driver for remote working. And so we've been part of many projects where there's been an incentive to do it, but there's not been a massive push, because when the oil price is high, for example, there's not a big push to lower costs, and you can still be successful operating in a very inefficient way. So the recent downturn with coronavirus, and suddenly everyone's out the office. Yeah. It's just no choice. I think that's been really interesting to see how quickly people have started to adopt remote ways of working. For us, it wasn't really that different, because we already work very remotely with our customers, and the ones we've installed the tech in are already working remotely. They have access to it all now, currently. So they were in many ways able to continue business as usual. There's the obvious cultural challenges about maintaining contact in the team and stuff, but in terms of actual being able to do your job, they could carry on.
I found it really shocking. I have to say, I found it really shocking, the whole, because remote working 20 odd years ago, I'm showing my age now, when I came out of uni, I went into a remote working position. So I worked with one big tech company around Europe, and I was the only person based in the UK. So everyone for me. So for all these years, I have used remote tools, comms. I find it easier working remotely than I do face-to-face sometimes. So to watch everybody adjust like that 20 odd years later, I found fascinating, because it's always been a norm for, and I don't think I'm alone in that.
I think the concept of remote working has been around for 20 years, and certainly the vision in oil and gas has been in there. The thing that we didn't have realistically 20 years ago was the bandwidth or the web tech. So we were installing, back in 2003, I was on a project installing remote data for new oil rigs. The whole networking architecture and how you did the connection was new. Digital security, we were just figuring out, it was a new area really, and now it's well understood. And equally bandwidth. I mean, bandwidth to home. Back in 2003, I don't know what my home internet connection was, but it was no, that's right. I think when in our first house, it was dial-up. I remember CompuServe, and I mean, you couldn't do this. But now we've got 100 megabit connection to the house. It's fine, and anyone can have that. So certainly 20 years ago, the vision was probably bigger than could really be implemented. Yeah. Computing, web technology, I mean, the number of iterations of the internet almost we've been through, web browsers now, I mean, it's so much further on. The amount of open source stuff, UI frameworks, we are in a much better place now. So I think the vision's been around, but realistically, we've only had the tech probably in the last 2 or 3 years to really make it good. But what I think is an interesting comparison is the switch between steam and electricity. Okay. There's similar parallels, because when electricity came out, all the factories used to run on steam. And so people say, well, electricity is a new thing, but it's very expensive to switch a factory from steam to electricity. And it never made sense in the business model. You couldn't justify it on a CapEx, OpEx return model. But what happens is the new factories that came along all installed electricity. And then suddenly, almost overnight, they could start to produce things a lot cheaper, and steam went out of business. Yeah. So if you're still, so if you were looking at the spreadsheet model of, did it make sense to switch? No, it never did. Oh, I've gone out of business. Where did that come from? And it's because just in reality, you get these discontinuities. If you don't prepare, then something comes along that isn't in your model, you can't see coming, and it will take you out. And I think there's been the talk about the need to go digital for years, and no one had this in their model of why you should do it. It was always like, well, you'll be more efficient, it'll be better. No one had a disease comes in and that shuts the world down. But it's going to happen, and you never know what it is. But the companies that invest in moving forward, in developing robustness almost in their business, survive it. That's right.
I think it's really interesting. As you're talking, I just had so many different thoughts. It's like I read somewhere, and I'm so sorry, I can't quote it because I can't remember where I read it, but where they said all you have to do is look back in history. If you can go back and look back in history, though the situations may have been different, technology, where we were as people, expectations that might have been different, but actually fundamentally, the triggers are always very, very similar onto the next kind of change. And digitalisation, I mean, that's been my whole career. So I've, when I had my year out at uni, I put the first intranet in at Citibank.
Yeah.
Like intranet, I was there when Skype launched, and now we use it alongside Zoom, for example. So I think we've been really privileged to kind of see that evolution. One of the things that I think we've had to do generationally is get on board with it. And as human beings kind of adapt behaviourally as well, and realising that it's okay to have face-to-face over a Zoom, and we don't have to be in front of each other, and you can still build relationships and still grow your business and serve your customers. And that's something, whereas I think the next generations that are now coming through, and they're starting, a lot more in their startups and their businesses and things, that's what they've grown up with. We've done that work before. So this whole period has been really interesting. And I know I've got a question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We spoke, when we were going through the pandemic, we spoke about oil and gas. We talked about what did this mean for oil and gas. Well, now that I say coming through it, but I think everybody hopefully knows what I mean by saying that. But as a business, we're all having to find our way through it. Now that we're sort of a little bit where the light is and looking back, how do you feel about it? Has your thoughts changed about oil and gas and kind of, as a result of COVID and the impact that it's had on it as an industry?
No, I don't think so. I don't think COVID has really changed my view on it. No more than it has on just the fragility of of business in general and how quickly things can change. No, I think a bigger question around oil and gas is the environmental impact. I think realistically, the impact of COVID is quite small compared to the long-term impact climate change could have. Yeah. Because that will shift entire populations. If the ice caps melt, you've lost areas of country that are never coming back. Areas of the world will change fundamentally. Agriculture will shift. There'll be tensions around the place. It's a slower change, but it's much, much bigger. Also, I think the plastics is a huge problem. Almost as bad, if not worse, than the carbon dioxide emissions has been the availability of cheap plastic from oil and just plastics in everything. And I think personally, I feel partly responsible, I guess. And as a consumer, we're equally responsible, but also in an industry. But it's not down to one person. It's a whole thing. Oil has given us cheap energy and cheap resources, cheap materials. So I think one of the things that I feel sad about is the single-use plastics as a result of COVID, all the PPE. I mean, because of what we're having to do now with wearing masks and lots of people in their jobs like hairdressers, and they have to have single-use throwaway plastic. I think that's going to have a really bad impact on the environment in the short term unless we can get a handle on it. So yeah, I think that's kind of bad. I think the key for oil and gas is to remain stable long enough to help a transition to a cleaner economy. I think if we have big price fluctuations, it upsets investment in either in new tech. If the oil price goes too low, it becomes too cheap. No one's going to switch. I mean,
Yeah.
when the oil price dropped and fuel's down to just over £1 a litre, electric doesn't look good anymore. So we need a stable price for a while, but we also need commitment from governments and companies to invest for the long term. Or the oil and gas industry has a massive part to play in decarbonisation. If you look at the technology required around CO2 reinjection, there's no other industry that can do that. So yeah, I think the industry has a really positive role to play in it. I don't think that's really, my views changed on that as a result of coronavirus.
I was just checking.
Yeah.
It's just because I've seen so many different conversations on LinkedIn. Decarbonisation is an interesting one because we have a whole series on that we recorded with Rob West from Thunderset Energy. So that's a playlist on Eigen TV. I'll just add that for everybody. So that was a really interesting conversation. I think now everyone's just trying to almost find their feet. And I think, digital transformation, digitalisation, whatever we want to call it, I think is becoming such a huge, important part of business and the way forward.
Yeah. I think a really important point that I'd like to make in this is if you're a company now that's looking, how do you implement this? There is a bewildering array of opportunities or options that you could consider. And the fear is possibly that of A, the unknown, and B, the cost. Because certainly if you go down the traditional route of getting a consultancy in, doing a strategy, going with a big company to implement it, the fear could be, well, this is just going to cost more. This is just an added expense. How is this actually going to make us more efficient? And I think the message I'd like to get out is that we've been doing this now for 13 years, and we have some off-the-shelf stuff that can just be implemented. One doesn't need to do a big study to start with. You can actually start small and implement real stuff straight away. And it costs orders of magnitude less than you might think to get this going. Yeah. It's not millions and millions of pounds. It's thousands of pounds in cost. Which I think would be a lot less than people might be fearing it could cost. So we have the stuff that can go in tomorrow and start delivering value.
DecisionBridge Technology, because I think this is probably a really nice time to interject with that. We have done separate videos on what it is and why people need it. But I think in the context of everything that we've been talking about, it would be quite nice to talk about it as to kind of why it's probably needed now more than ever, especially given what you have just said. And I think that would be quite an interesting thing to pause on and talk about.
Well, what we found is that a digital project often starts with the sort of the fancy vision, and it's usually a visual image, be it a dashboard or something. But when it comes to implementation, you find that dashboard is part of a work process. And just doing that one bit of the work process doesn't unlock the value, because all the other stuff still needs to happen. And it may happen in other systems, or that dashboard then gets screenshotted and goes back into a PowerPoint. So how do you fill in all the in-between spaces to digitize the whole workflow? And once you've digitized the workflow, you can start to build on it and automate more and more bits of it, add triggers in there, trigger other stuff. You start to see like the next level. So I guess you do one, when you've completely done one layer, you can build on it. Whereas if you just do one thing and you never finish it, it's not, you never get to the point where you deliver the whole value. And so that's what DecisionBridge Technology does. It's going end to end. It's getting from the information to the action so that you get the value out at the end of it. And it's made up of lots of different things that come together to enable it.
I think it's brilliant. I do. But then we spent a lot of time recently launching it as well. So, so for anybody watching, it's on eigen.co. You'll find it all there, and it's in our brochure and things like that. And yes, I'm doing my marketing spiel. But no, I think it's brilliant. And I think it's a really effective way of kind of explaining how everything works together and the benefit that it brings. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. We've talked about lots of different things. Is there anything in particular that you would like to close with, from a customer perspective, business perspective, surviving through downturns?
I think one of the things that we've learned, or that we're now able to do much more so than we previously were, was to take on the risk of the initial setup. When we've done these projects previously, there's always the element of the unknown. What we know we can help, but we don't know what the scale of the problem is. The customer wants to know we're competent. So how do we both de-risk that for each other? How does the customer get to see if we're competent without committing, and how do we get to protect ourselves from being completely finding out that this is an enormous problem that we've way underquoted for? Well, now we've done enough of these. We have a pricing model that we've switched to just being a flat monthly fee, and as part of that, we do the setup, the configuration, the install, and that covers then the ongoing licensing and support. So there's no big initial commitment from the customer side, and we take on the risk of being able to get it working early on, so that we can prove competence, which I think is a key. That's something I guess previously we didn't have the guts to do, or we hadn't done enough of them to be sure, but now we've done enough of them. We've got an implementation model that we're much more confident in. I'm such a big fan of the way that the business has evolved. I think it's just brilliant, and it's really always really nice to see that your customers have been with you for, you know, quite some time as well, and you've all kind of grown together. And in fact, that's actually something that's been said to me, literally, like, the longer you're with us, the more you find out we can do. It's almost like it's the opposite of what maybe we should be doing. I don't know, but certainly the reason we build these long relationships is because we are genuinely competent. We have that knowledge, we have the skills, and we try and be as helpful as we can. We're not just in this to try and sell a product. We're actually in it to solve problems.
Yeah, and you enjoy doing it. I know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we always say the word joy. But thank you, Murray, so much. It has been a real pleasure talking to you today. And if anybody's got any questions, as always, pop them down below and we will answer them as quickly as we can, or reach out to us via the website. And the URL to the website will be at the end of this video.